Hi, Erin. So nice to have you here. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audiences?
Hi, I'm so glad that we can finally come together. We've been talking about doing this for I think months,
Yeah.
which means it's a really important thing to do. So thank you for connecting and your work with us. Um, yeah, so my name is Erin Kaller. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist currently under the private practice supervision of Kristen Baird. She has a private practice called Baird Integrated Therapy. Under her supervision, we focus and specialize on ADHD
Mhm.
and neurodivergency in general. So
Mhm.
I have a master's in clinical psychology from Pepperdine. And then before this world of going towards licensure as a
Yeah.
therapist, I also have a master's in education and a
Mhm.
bachelor's in child development. So
Yeah.
this is a bit of a second career for me. But
Yeah.
I do feel like there's kind of this thread
The
throughout the
threat.
career,
Yeah.
yeah, of like
Yeah.
just this human curiosity and way of being in
Yes.
the world. I'm
Yeah.
sure I will tangent off of that later. Something relevant for this though, this interview. I'm one of the specializations for the path of neurodivergency and that specialization, right? I kind
Mhm.
of have two paths that I focus on, but a primary one is on ADHD.
Mhm.
So I completed the coursework on ADHD to be a ADHD certified clinical services provider. And
Mhm.
then I don't think I told you this, I'm currently going through the training for autism spectrum disorder
Oh,
clinical specialist. Yeah. So hopefully
yeah.
next week I'll complete it.
Great.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I'm
So I'm just
excited.
on I'm on this process of just like expanding my scope of competence in the
Yes.
neurodivergency
Yes.
world
Yes.
as a clinician working with
Yes,
clients. Yeah.
that's what I appreciate about you and your work, Erin. So I
Mhm.
discovered Erin from our professional magazine called The Therapist, and Erin wrote a really well-written article that backed up by a lot of research, and I had a lot of respect for her. And then I looked her up and realized that she's like me. We got certified as ADHD certified clinical providers, which is a pretty lengthy program to go through. And so I had even more respect for you, and I always want to extra support for my clients as I work with ADHD affected relationships as a couple
Yeah.
therapist and a family therapist sometimes. And some of
Mhm.
my clients identified as female with a diagnosis of ADHD. And I notice how they present themselves differently as my male identified clients with ADHD, and how there's not enough understanding and education for both themselves and sometimes their partners and families and even say teachers, right, in
Yeah.
K-5 school to
Mhm.
identify girls with ADHD symptoms because they look so different, just like ASD. ASD look different in girls than in boys and in different
Mhm.
populations. So let's dive in. I'm so excited and I wanted to kind of pick your brain, Erin, as for how ADHD look different in girls and women.
Yeah, that is a good question because if you think about it, you have a broad population of people. You have a room full of people. Right? A certain amount of those people would have ADHD symptoms that would meet a diagnosis, right? A
Mhm.
certain amount of those people would be women. And most of those women would have a presentation of ADHD symptoms that would look like those inattentive
Mhm,
symptoms,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So if you're talking to somebody with inattentive symptoms of ADHD, they're daydreaming, they're spacing out. You don't
Yeah.
really it's not an intentional thing. They're probably creative, kind of stuck in their
Mhm.
own head.
Mhm, mhm.
But if you're talking to them, it seems like they're not paying attention. If you know
Right,
about ADHD, they are.
right, right,
They're just not paying attention to you, right? They're
right.
thinking about something.
Yeah.
So most women, according to research that we know right now, have that inattentive presentation of ADHD, but I
Uh-huh.
really want to caution us to put to see a woman and think, oh, most women have inattentive ADHD, and
Right.
therefore
Right.
this person's presentation doesn't match that stereotype, and so she doesn't have ADHD, right?
Right.
So
We need to
it's
fall
like,
into that.
like I really careful with that, but I think why that has come up historically as like the research has evolved on ADHD, the
Mhm.
reason why I think this stereotype of women being inattentive is because historically the hyperactive folks would get
Yeah.
the most attention,
Right. From
and the
school, right? From
men
teachers.
were,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So the boys, right? The boys bouncing off the wall would get most attention. Okay, they all have ADHD. Okay, there we go. That's our diagnosis for ADHD, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you'd have the quiet girls in class. They don't
Uh-huh.
cause too much trouble. They're sliding by.
Yeah.
Oh, girls must be inattentive. And so they have,
Right. Right.
inattentive ADHD.
Yeah.
What I've found is that it's not that reductionist in black and white,
Right.
but that is like the general narrative of ADHD right now.
Mhm.
And that's is like kind of what people assume is that
Right.
most girls have the more inattentive ADHD.
Right. So I
Mhm.
hear that, well, with the current DSM-5 diagnosis, we have the inattentive type, we have the hyperactive impulsive type, and then we have the combined type, right? It's
Yes.
really a
Yeah.
man-made criteria for us to identify and
Mm.
label certain conditions. And so it's
Mm.
easier to, say, provide medication, treatment, and insurance
Yeah.
purposes.
And I don't want to devalidate
Yeah.
those diagnostic symptoms and criteria, right? Because if you're learning about the neurobiology, it's it's more complex than that, but I can see where that would be accurate in its own way.
Yeah.
I for providers, or if you're self listening and watching this,
Yeah.
I'd be curious if women have more hyperactive ADHD, but cognitive hyperactivity, right, is a
Mhm.
possibility. Like
That's a
maybe
possibility.
they're combined where it's an inattentive presentation,
Right. Right.
but it's not like they're daydreaming
Yeah.
cognitively. They're hyperactive,
Yeah. They could be
right?
making up their own stories. They could be doing their own thing,
Or hyper focusing and
or
like
hyper
really
focusing.
thinking.
Yeah. And
But
then
if
that
you're
can cause
looking at them,
anxiety as well, right? It can lead
oh,
to a lot of
that's
anxiety. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's other ways of looking at that. It's almost like a false dichotomy for me, but
Yeah.
that's how it's understood and explained right now. So I would just
Yeah.
challenge us to kind of be
Yeah.
curious about that.
So I hear, yes, I'm there with you to be curious. I often tell my clients and my viewers that everyone's ADHD is different because
Yes.
we're all unique beings. Well, everybody's brain is different. Seriously, there could be a lot of symptoms that's similar to ADHD that could be caused by insomnia, perimenopause,
Hmm.
depression, trauma, anxiety. And it's very hard to differentiate those diagnoses, especially for kids, because they're not as verbal.
Hmm.
So it's very cautious not to diagnose your children or your partner or yourself without professional assessment, right? And to label them and to even to shame them, and that's not very
Yeah.
productive and effective in relationships.
I feel like we probably need to come back and keep having a conversation
I
just
know
on
we
the
need a
diagnosis
we need a
part.
Siri to talk about that.
Yes,
Let
just
me
have
let me
it.
rein us in. Um,
Okay.
so why do you think women get diagnosed much later in life and miss the opening for support?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that needs to be told, right?
Yeah.
There's a different variables. There always is. Why do women get diagnosed later? Well, one, because of that historical context that I was just referencing, that the understanding of ADHD and how it shows up is not as reductionist as like we've been understood it to be.
We're not looking for those certain signs, right?
But either not looking for the signs, or historically, it's been little boys who have been diagnosed.
Right.
And then with the evolution of fMRI, with just neuroimaging and more validation and reliability of psychometric studies into this, we can have an expanded and more complex view of what ADHD is on a neurobiological level, which again will open up reductionist perspective. Okay, so one, the science is expanding.
Yes.
To the social worlds are expanding too, right? And I don't want to say evolving or progressing, but just different.
So does it mean when we have more, say, financial resources as well, we're giving more away from being survival to be more paying attention in some way for how women function?
I think what I was alluding to was more like gender roles and expectations. Yeah, gender roles and expectations. Like, if you have ADHD, if you're a woman in the world, that is a difficult way to be, whether you are, a queer woman, a cisgender woman, it is a difficult thing to be, right? Being a woman in this world with ADHD is very difficult. And then if you have complications, or we would say confounding issues that come up, like depression, anxiety, whatever it is, right? Then life sensory challenges, sensory processing.
Yes.
Which is what we connected over. It's extremely hard to just kind of be in this world. And then if you throw in a lot of things like the mandatory 40-hour work week to survive in this world, or the hustle culture of this world, or just like, how do we even neurotypical folks are struggling, and this
world is not designed for anyone.
Yeah, and this generation, especially upcoming generation and past generations, and the social systems and discrimination and press, all these things influence an individual's ability to even have the opportunity to survive at this point, right? And then to have ADHD way of being in the world, it makes it that much harder, I think. So like the impact in those gender roles and those cultural expectations, and I don't mean that abstractly, I mean the ability to hold down a job.
Yes.
Right? And a job that will pay rent. I live in LA, you're in San Francisco.
Yes. My both expensive places.
Yeah. You cannot go by you need a living wage. You can't go by on a minimum wage. You can. And anyway, so I think it's very challenging right now with the gender expectation and the roles, in combination with like expanded research and understanding that has shifted over time on our understanding of ADHD and women with ADHD in the world right now, especially in more cultural spaces.
Yeah, I can definitely add in another culture piece as for, the expectation of Asian women.
Yes.
Besides being a householder, also to be demure and calm all the time. I'm thinking about some of the challenge of emotional dysregulation for ADHD symptoms, and that show up in women, that they can't, aggression is not encouraged to be expressed, at least in my culture, Chinese culture, for women. So, and then they were getting labeled as strange girls, right, who are really rowdy and wild, while they may not know what's really going on neurologically, and otherwise they get activated, and then they start to protest by showing different ways when they're not heard, understood, and they may protest in a really loud way. That's culturally and generally not the norm, and that's being criticized and shamed.
Yeah, and that really comes up with the idea of culture and cultural identity. So I brought up like gender roles, but
Mm-hmm.
we all have an intersectionality of
Yeah.
identities, and
Yeah.
all of them are impacted by an ADHD way of being in the world,
I
right?
know.
And when you talk about my understanding, I'm not Chinese or
Mm-hmm.
Asian,
Mm-hmm.
but my understanding is it's a very communal culture, a very
Mm-hmm.
collectivist culture,
Mm-hmm.
which has a lot of strength
Yes.
inherently in it
Yes.
that you don't see in in a hyper individualized culture like the United States, or what I would consider kind of more the surrounding culture that I exist in, right?
Yeah.
If you go to a traditionally Chinese community or culture, they're going to be very more communal. There's certain expectations are very different,
Mm-hmm.
including those gender roles, than if I
Yes.
were to go to what I would consider like my home,
That's
which
right.
is not Chinese.
Individual characters
Just,
are not encouraged for sure and criticized.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
You got
But,
it right. You got it.
huh?
You got it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's the individual and the
Yeah.
collectivist cultures. Both have
Mhm.
positive, both are negative. But if you have
Absolutely.
ADHD, it's going to be difficult in both
Yes. Yes.
cultures in different
In
ways.
different
But
ways.
there's a intersect, and it's really curious. And this is something we'll have to bookmark. But how the ADHD way of being in the world, which is the way I kind of like frame it for myself,
Yeah.
even though it's a diagnosis and I can do the clinical part,
Yes.
but it shows up in every part of your intersectionality of identity. And
Mhm.
it is not like the person with ADHD is always right.
Mhm. Mhm.
They make a lot of mistakes.
It's just a
And
different. We're just
it's
different.
just a different
Yeah.
way, and then they respond to their environment in a certain way that might not
Yeah.
be an appropriate way, legit. Like, they
Well,
could
being
use some
if you judge the
insight.
difference as being inappropriate, right? And that's by itself is kind of a label, a judgment that because we're different, this is wrong,
sometimes it
right?
sometimes it might be, and
Yeah.
sometimes it might not be, and that difference is really defined by the cultural expectations
And the context, right? Where
and
you
the context, right? And so I think the challenge is, how can I help my clients
mm-hmm.
be themselves
Right.
in this world, in their
In this
world,
context, in different
right?
contexts, in
And
relationships.
yeah, and
Yes.
relationship, and where
Yes.
are those negotiations and compromise that
Yes.
kind of need to be made in order for them to be themselves in a weird
Absolutely.
way? And then where are the things that are not compromisable, that that insight is not congruent with any part of them, and they
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
remove themselves, which is actually a lot less than sometimes clients think. Like, it's a very slow evolving process.
It's very
There's a
slow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
I'm
was
glad you
Yeah.
kind of segued into our next topic, which is
Mhm.
how ADHD affected relationships, right? Just like
Yes.
you said, I totally agree with you that
Hmm.
it is about, well, first get to know yourself, your own neurological, physiological response, and how you're wired and how you respond to the external environment, and then communicate to each other and see what is the hard boundaries and where are the things that you can be
Hmm.
more flexible and accommodate each other, right? So I noticed, so for certain clients with either ADHD or ASD, they think, well, the whole world need to be changed around them, which is actually another layer of, it's the same issue basically. Now it's just done to the other partner, which is also not fair, right? There's
Hmm.
a what's the concept of that syndrome? Cassandra syndrome,
Hmm.
where the partner of someone with ASD, because they couldn't be heard, and then their relationship trauma. So what I'm trying to say is,
Yeah.
how can we be true to ourselves and get along when our brains are different?
Yeah, yeah. You're sparking a lot of like thoughts in my head. Okay, let's see if I
Uh-huh.
can. Where do I start? I think what you're referring to are these two ideas of psychological flexibility and theory of mind. is the way that I would like kind of think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So theory of mind is an idea that you can take the perspective maybe of another person, right? And to kind of know that they are just as much of a human being as you are, and they have their own experiences and their own insight.
Yes.
And that in itself is a very like tricky business, right? For anyone.
It's a capacity to develop. So in I'm training with a couples institute, right? Developmental model. So we call it other differentiation. Literally means that I fight for your right to be different from me, and I understand you, but I'm holding onto my ground without merging with you, knowing we're different, but we can talk about and still stay connected, which is a real capacity to build. A lot of people don't have it, especially from collective cultures.
No, I would argue both. I would argue both, my friend. Theory of mind actually is kind of even that first step of understanding that somebody else has a different perspective, let alone boundary setting, which is the understanding of my boundaries and your boundaries, right? Nedra Tawwab, I just love her for boundary setting, by the way. Set boundaries, find peace. I don't know her. That book's really helpful. Okay, so theory of mind is something that I think that people with neurodivergency struggle with, and they're not the only ones who struggle with it. You don't need to have neurodivergency to struggle with the fact that somebody else has a different perspective and way of being in the world. But I think it is something that people with neurodivergency struggle with. So in session, often it's a matter of, Johari's window. So how you see yourself, how other people see you, how other people see you that you know that they see you as. See you as, whether you agree with it or not, they might see you as a different person. And then what you both don't know about like this emerging self, right? Like we're always trying to understand ourselves. So like that kind of just conversation is very helpful, I think, in that process. And that kind of leads to, I've been trained in ACT, the acceptance and commitment therapy. That kind of leads to that idea of psychological flexibility, where it's like, maybe, like I was saying, maybe this isn't a false dichotomy. Maybe there is something we don't know, or something nuanced, or something that happened that day, or something being triggered. And maybe it's okay. I think with couples, the struggle is like, it's also, and with people with ADHD, because they tend to hyperfocus and want to know. They want to know if they're interested, and they don't if they don't. It's not salient and whatever. I think that I think it's challenging to actually be okay with not knowing because you're never going to know somebody else fully, even if you are their partner. We kind of sometimes when I'm working with couples, I try to put aside the knowing or not knowing of the ADHD and how it shows up and how it doesn't. And then as those kind of superficial things like the forgetting or the hyperactivity or the emotional regulation, as that shows up, we process it. But what I find is really helpful is going to their shared values.
Yes.
Right? What is the core underlying thing that they are both believing about being in relationship with each other?
Right.
And sometimes that shows up as compassion. It's really important to be open and compassionate and to kind of, what's that word? Like give them the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
They're not doing this personally.
Yes. Don't take it personally.
Let's not go with your first reaction of, I'm going to take this personally, but let's say, okay, there's going to be a reason. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'll ever know what it is. But let's just work off of that assumption. Right? Wonderful. And that really helps, I think, sometimes.
Yes. So I hear you work with the value, right? Which is a
value.
Which is come from ACT, but also a lot of modalities also use that, right? even in mediation, we're value-based and we talk about values. I feel like we can take a couple sessions to talk about different modalities. I'm thinking about center therapy and couples institutes, development model. Let's schedule them in. As for issues can be addressed, and how do we work with that, right? Not just for it's sometimes helpful for even clients to hear what are we approaching and why do we prescribe this exercise? Why do we do this in the session, right? Well, I'm aware of our time, so I'm going to bring us back. If if there's like one thing that you wish every woman who identify with ADHD symptoms and their partners can understand about ADHD in relationship, would that be?
It would be two different things. So the partner would, I'd say, don't take it personally. Let's just assume for now it's not personal. And for the woman, I would say stay curious and playful.
Yeah.
You're like women with ADHD, they make a lot of mistakes, social mistakes or academic mistakes or financial mistakes and things like this. And they have a lot of self-judgment, like you were saying, shame.
Yeah.
And hold on, there's so many beautiful things too. So being someone with ADHD in the world who's a woman or identifies as a woman, hold on to that playful and creative space. Like we need that in the world.
Yes.
We need you. We need you.
Well, we need creativity and curiosity anywhere, anyways, right?
And
we're losing.
Hold it lightly. Hold life lightly. Hold this day, this moment with as much lightness and effortlessness as you can.
So so I hear one is do not take things personally, for the partner and not for the person with ADHD symptoms as well. So I would say more as for give an example. For example, see if your partner with ADHD didn't remember to call you or text you or pick up that milk, right? Don't take it as for, they don't care about me. Or they don't take what I say seriously. If your love language is act of service, they didn't pick up the milk. I need this milk, so you don't care enough about me, right? That's a often place to go when you take things personally. So put it as well, it could be their ADHD or not, I don't know, but they really forget, like I'm trusting they have their best intention, but it just didn't happen. I'm frustrated, but it just didn't happen. Right. So that's how not take it personally. And the other one is to keep your curiosity and playfulness. A song came to me, which is Dancing Through Life.
Do you sing for your audience?
Dancing Through Life.
Do you want to sign us off?
Yes. So Dancing Through Life. We'll see you next week. And I have to connect with you again, Erin, for our future series. Bye.
I'll see you again.